Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. If you've been wondering, where has all the philosophy gone? Unfortunately, I've been working on a super cool project. I'm developing a course, an online course, Introduction to Logic, where I will be talking about propositional logic and predicate logic from the ground up. I'm really excited about it. The book I'm going to be using is one that I love, that I've really gotten into over the years, called Nicholas Smith's Logic, The Laws of Truth. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be really cool. So I haven't been able to do a whole lot of the philosophy. However, I have been thinking about the philosophy. By the way, if you're looking at this video and you're thinking, wait a second, this doesn't look right? Things look a lot different. I got a new camera, right? Upgrade. So I'm pretty stoked about that too. We'll see how well this is going. Same microphone, so hopefully the sound is the same, but we'll see. In any case, I thought today I'd bring you a video about the philosophy of YouTube. Lately I've been thinking a lot about it. Have you considered whether YouTube is a good or a bad thing? Now, just to put all my cards out on the table, I'm not going to say that it's a terrible thing, and I'm not going to say that it's the greatest thing ever, right? I think usually the truth lies somewhere in between. Not always. I think there are plenty of times where we can say the truth is, on one side or the other. So, for example, sexual assault, you should not do that, right? That's on the zero chance, the no way you should do that kind of a thing spectrum. But there are a lot of other things that seem like the truth of the matter lies somewhere in between. I think this is probably one of them. There are probably some really good things about YouTube, and probably some things that are not the greatest. But what's interesting is it has become such an important medium. So I've taught young adults for over a decade now, and at the beginning of that time, YouTube wasn't nearly as powerful as it is now. Nowadays, young adults rarely watch television at all. They tell me that that first of all, if they're still living at home, that mom and dad control the TV, right? So they don't get to decide what they're going to watch. And even if they don't, if they live in like a dorm or something, then you have to compete with other people who want to watch that television, right? You have to, it's in the Air Force Academy, we had a SAR, a Squadron Assembly Room. That's what it was, Squadron Assembly Room. And there was a television in the SAR. And if you were a freshman or I think freshman or sophomore, you couldn't get regular TV. You had to actually go into the SAR to watch whatever show that you wanted to watch. And of course, freshmen weren't allowed to do anything, so we weren't allowed to go in there anyway. But the upperclassmen were the ones who got to determine what we were going to watch, or whoever got there first also got to determine, which was weird, I still remember, this was so funny, what was it, like 95 or 96, something like that? I never had watched Friends in my life, the show Friends, and all the upperclassmen came running out of the SAR. They were all excited because Rachel married Ross or kissed Ross. I can't remember what happened, but that's you were a slave to whatever they wanted to watch. On YouTube, one great thing is that you get to decide, and so that's one of the reasons why a lot of students really liked it. I will say one thing that I think is interesting. There was a philosopher named G.K. Chesterton who was talking about family and the merits of family. And he said, what's interesting about it is you get to pick your friends, right? You get to pick whom you're going to hang out with and stuff like that. But what you don't get to pick are your neighbors and your family, right? You have to actually deal with these people who might suck sometimes, right? Who might have different perspectives, and then you're going to have to listen to those perspectives. But that's also one of the great things, right? If we all just hung out with people that were like us, then we would just make a bunch of clones. And who wants that? You are forced in a family to deal with people that disagree with you sometimes, and you're forced to learn patience, and you're forced to learn loving people who might be unlovable at times. So I think maybe in the same way we could say that forcing us to watch television together was nice because you had to watch those shows that sucked. you had to exercise patience because you were with your family members or with some friends or whatever it is. Also, maybe you got to watch shows that you typically wouldn't have watched. I know my wife loves HGTV. I think that's the one. We always have to watch International House Hunters whenever we go to my mother-in-law's house in Albuquerque. We don't have cable television, so she loves to watch those shows and dream how she could live in Spain for, that she would love to live in Spain. I mean, we live in San Clemente, California. I'm like, let's stay here for the rest of our lives. She's like, I want to go to España. And I don't know. I love her very much, so I'm going to try to get her there sometime. In any case, I'm forced to watch these shows, and to be honest, after a while, you kind of get into them, right? You kind of get ideas about maybe our house could look like that, or maybe it's not so crazy for us to move somewhere. So there's one benefit to watching the television. Of course, it's also a really nice benefit to be able to choose whatever you wanted to watch. There's also the fact that YouTube allows people like me who normally wouldn't have any access to people like you to tell you stuff, right? To offer you either entertainment. For me, not so much entertainment as education. And I can offer that to you. You might not have any chance to see something like this anywhere else, right? It might be the case that they don't offer philosophy in your school or in the college that you go to, that the philosophy program is, just for philosophers. And so, you are out of luck. But you can always look up a YouTube video and see some information that you never would have gotten before. There's also personalities, right, that come to the fore that before YouTube, you would have to go through, talent agencies, and there were these, ABC and CBS and NBC, and it was like they were the guardians of entertainment. If you didn't match up to what they wanted, then they were not going to accept you, and you had no chance. Now, at the very least, you could throw yourself out there, and you don't have these guardians standing in the way anymore, right? There are issues, right? So one of the biggest, if you've never heard of him, Neil Postman was not quite a philosopher, maybe a sociologist, writing in the 80s. He had these great books with amazing titles. Amusing Ourselves to Death was one of them. How to Watch the Nightly News. They were really good books, and he I don't know if he came up with the term, but he used the term. It was the first time I've ever seen it, called information glut. And he pointed out the fact that right now, and this was back in the 80s, it's almost too good. We almost have too much information to deal with, right? At one time, maybe we didn't have access to information, and so, we were limited by that. But now we have so much information that we struggle maybe to sift through all that information to see what is the information we really want. This is why in schools now they teach stuff about Googling things, right? How do you Google something so that you get a result that won't be totally arbitrary? Well, in YouTube, you do have the ability to access some of this information, but some of it's going to be skewed. I mean, if you think about some of the philosophers you're going to hear, not all of them are going to be as good as this guy right here. I'm just joking. But, there are going to be some with agendas. Of course, I think everybody has a somewhat of an agenda. I try to be as objective as possible, but I can't help but to believe certain things, and they just come out in the way that I argue for things, or the way that I evaluate positions. I just can't help it, right? I'm a human being. I have to have some kind of perspective. But I try to be open and honest about it, right? Some philosophers aren't going to be open and honest about it. They're just going to tell you this is the way things are. So, for example, in philosophy of mind, I hear all kinds. I'm not a dualist, but I hear all kinds of guys that gang up on the dualists, and they just act like dualism isn't even a position, right? Like it's not even tenable. But there are amazing philosophers that are dualists, and I want to be like, what are you guys talking about? What is it? There's this whole literature, on dualism and the mind that that you just, sweep from. And if that's all you saw was some guy talking about it like that, then you would think, oh, that must not, whatever that thing is, it must not be important. Dualism is, by the way, the idea that we have a mind that is separate from our body, a non-physical mind. So, yeah, just listening to some guy on YouTube, you have no real way of knowing that is a legitimate. You have no way of really fact checking a lot of times, right? A lot of times you can put whatever you want to on YouTube videos, and you can go on Snopes.com, you can go on fact checking websites, but they're not always going to have the answers. I remember there was a movie once that came out called Zeitgeist, and as a philosopher of religion. And as a Christian, I had learned a lot about this stuff before, and it was atrocious. I mean, just it was factually abhorrent. They had done such a poor job, and legitimate historians, legitimate academics would have told you there is nothing in here that's really, there's so much absurdity in this video that you shouldn't take it seriously, but without having access to those specific guys, you're not going to know that that this video is bunk, and they make it out so like as if it were just a legitimate video. So, yeah, the information glut, the ability to sort of throw whatever you want out there is also a drawback to YouTube. So there you go. There's a benefit that you get access. There is a detriment that it's almost too much access. I think finally the big thing that I've struggled with myself is the format of YouTube. So this video I'm going to upload without really having much of editing, but a lot of the what my students like are heavily edited videos with lots of jump cuts. And I've talked to YouTubers that are successful. I don't mean to brag about my 221 followers. Love you all, or subscribers, right? That's how poor of a YouTuber I am. I don't even know subscribers. However, my students will tell me that they like to watch. They'll sit down, right, with a snack right before having to study, and they'll be like, I just want to watch like a 5-minute video, just something really quick while I have my snack. And they'll watch something that that will be heavy with jump cuts, right, from boom, boom, boom. And successful YouTubers have told me that the reason there's so many jump cuts is because it keeps your attention, right? It's like my students like to just click on the next, click next, click next, click next, and that those jump cuts are almost as if you were doing that, like you were jumping to the next thing. So they're kind of just almost like just clapping in your face. Hey, listen, right? And so that is a strain on concentration, right? You can imagine it's very difficult to sit through, let's say, some kind of mathematical proof, or in my case, some kind of logical proof that has a lot of steps when you're used to somebody, with lots of bells and whistles and lots of jump cuts. How do you sit through those kinds of things? So me adding videos like that are kind of detrimental, because I am contributing to a poor attention span. And they like the very short videos, and I've been trying to make them recently of like 5 minutes and less, because they like to be able to choose another one. This is what they tell me, is that they sit down to watch one, and then they look at you like, you see like 20-minute video, you're like, that's a lot to commit to. You see an hour and you're like, there's no way, right? So they like those small commitments, and then to be able to say, all right, next one, and they'll keep watching. They'll end up watching like an hour worth of videos because they want to they want to just keep sitting there and relaxing. However, they weren't going to commit to the hour video in the first place. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy. In any case, so am I morally reprehensible for contributing to that? I have had to struggle with this, to be honest. As a philosopher, I feel like I am in some ways, making you guys poor philosophers by customizing you to tidbit philosophy, right? I try not to. I try to make it as rigorous as possible in a very short time span. I do think, however, that it's kind of the case. I could just sit back and say, well, fine, I'm not going to do any of that stuff then, right? I'm not even going to get on YouTube. I'm not going to make my videos YouTube accessible. Problem then is nobody's watching, right? And first of all, I'm doing this because I would like people to get something out of it, not just because I want to put a bunch of videos up, or that would suck for no purpose. But second of all, I do think it provides people with an access. And it's kind of like this. It's kind of like I could write an essay about this, and I could publish it, and the people who would end up reading about it would be people that probably don't need to worry about it, right? People that are already reading philosophy books. So I provide these videos because it's kind of, I recently spoke to a philosophy department chair that was telling me, it's kind of like a meet them where they're at, right? I'm meeting you guys where you're at. And I'm not knocking you, by the way. I don't mean to knock you by saying you foolish people. But I do think, here is something that you can access, and it is, granted, it is harmful to your attention span, but I don't think it's, so egregious that you won't be able to understand anything after you listen to these videos, right? I do think that there's something to making philosophy entertaining, making it interesting. So in those respects, I think that, YouTube maybe isn't the best medium for philosophy. I also think, by the way, a big thing I think is that philosophy is best in dialogue. And dialogue we can do on the comments, and I do love them. And however, it's that one-to-one interchange that's so much more fruitful. But, we're missing those things with having YouTube. But by just totally throwing out, we're also missing a lot of benefits, which is, like I said, accessibility. A big thing, I think, a big bonus that I haven't mentioned yet, and here's my last one, is the repeatability. Right? You hear a concept, you think to yourself, oh, that's interesting. You walk away, and then later on, somewhere in your life, you think like, oh, this is just like that one thing I heard. Now, if you heard it in class, like I'm thinking back to my university days when I was in grad school. I was getting these high level courses, and I took as many notes as I could, but then the teacher would say something that you wouldn't think was that pertinent, and then years later you're like, what was he saying again? And you don't have access to these professors anymore, right? Like they're gone and doing other things, and so I like the fact that it has been ensconced into YouTube for all time, so you can always come back and check on it. I think that's very powerful. So, is YouTube bad for philosophy? That's our big question. And I would say yes and no, right? And only time is really going to tell just how much it affects the philosophy. But it's definitely the case that there are drawbacks to using YouTube. But at the same time, I think, it's so ubiquitous for you philosophers to just check out and say, well, it's no good for philosophy. I think we'll miss out huge, on an opportunity to converse with people, to allow people to have access to ideas that I think are so powerful and so interesting, and really at the heart of, for me, what makes life worthwhile is to ponder, to wonder, right? That's what Socrates said, is all philosophy begins in wonder. And I love being able to offer some crazy ideas for you guys to sit back and think like, I wonder, how does that work? Or, what must the world be like in order for these phenomena to exist the way they do? Anyways, that's all I got for right now. As I said, I'm working on those logic videos. I think they're going to be really fun and really powerful, and I think you're going to get a lot out of them. I'll explain a little bit more as time goes on, and I'll try to get a few more philosophy videos out as well, and not be so negligent. But yeah, if you have any ideas, is YouTube good for philosophy? Is YouTube good in general, or is it a bad thing? Then let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas, and that's